make it better than yesterday. You can always find a way to start over again. When the sun rises, you can start over again. A new day, you can make it better than yesterday.
Hey, what's up, y'all? So I wanted to introduce y'all to the amazing work of Lyon-Martin. So for 45 years, Lyon-Martin Community Health Center has been a powerful healthcare org in the San Francisco area, servicing all of the queer community. Their mission has been very clear from the beginning to provide compassionate, trauma-informed healthcare services that are responsive to, we got unique needs in our community, particularly the overlapping community of the trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, intersex people, and, LGBTQ plus women, regardless of their immigration status or their ability to pay. So I wanted to bring some of the leaders of that org on to talk to y'all about the amazing work they got going on. So I brought the executive director, JM, and the director of programs, Donna. How are y'all?
Good. Thank you so much for having us.
So I wanted to start off by asking, this is a part of the legacy of Phyllis Lyon and Dale Martin, the first same-sex couple to get married in San Francisco back in '04. Tell me some of the history and the backstory of the inception of Lyon-Martin.
Yeah, so Lyon-Martin was actually born out of a research study that was done by some OBGYN residents from UCSF who happened to be queer women. They were working in the ER one day, and a lesbian woman came in and potentially had pelvic inflammatory disease. But at the time, the thinking was that cisgender lesbians actually could not transmit sexually transmitted diseases to one another at all. And so there was no studies on this yet. And they didn't know whether it was possible that this person actually had an STI and had progressed to pelvic inflammatory disease. So they did a pilot research study looking at the behaviors of, lesbian cisgender women, and looked at the transmission rates, and actually saw that, it was possible to transmit STIs to one another, and actually that a lot of lesbians avoided care because of their experiences of stigma and discrimination within healthcare settings. So they decided to create a By Us For Us clinic, really focusing on the needs of queer women in San Francisco. And from there, it just really grew. And it's always kind of stayed really focused on the By Us For Us model. So knowing that queer women, trans people will always be better served by people who have experienced, those identities and that way of life with them.
I like that you said for us by us, so because Black folks call that FUBU. I think that that's important when it comes to care, because I feel like nobody can give you the insight on what we need better than us. And so one of the things that I think is super, super powerful is that this is one of the largest has the largest number of clinicians that are of trans experience in the world. And I think that is so, 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 so dope. So as trans leaders, what was some of your personal buy-in into this project in particular? There are so many orgs in San Francisco. Why is this one, other than honey, I need a job, but what were some of y'all personal buy-ins?
That's an interesting question. I think so. I'm a newer employee, so maybe I'll start with that. So, first of all, it's a trans-led organization, which is so rare actually in terms of health clinics, right? So, and there are other types of organizations that, like the Transgender Law Center and all these other places that are trans-led that do work in different arenas. But in terms of there being a formalized health clinic that prioritizes healthcare for trans people, not as an add-on or having a history of doing HIV care for 50 years and then suddenly being like, oh, we have to work with these people. This is something that's been intrinsic in the care model that I find really appealing. You know, what's so important about this is that, you know, FUBU model, right, where we really get to say and have ownership over our lives, and that we're taking the opinions and the needs of people from our communities and turning that into healthcare, turning that into policy, turning that into things that can really have an effect directly on people's quality of life.
So tell me, because you are the director of programs, what are some of your like y'all have tons. So for you, what is the ones that are kind of like, oh, I can't wait. Well, since you're a new employee, I can't wait to really get involved in this one because this is the program for me. Like to really, you know, to see the impact of it. What programs kind of stand out to you as a new employee?
Sure. So prior to coming on, one of the most impressive things I think about Lyon-Martin is the economic model that they follow. So it's not just professional development, you know, opportunities here and there. It's truly a from the ground up model where, you know, we're hiring from community and then we're providing career opportunities. And some of that programming includes externships and fellowships for nursing. There's going to be some new programming coming up for phlebotomy externship, electrolysis, and hair removal externship, which is very, very important for trans folks for a variety of reasons, not just for surgery, but just for, you know, quality of life purposes. You know, so there is those are some things that are just, I think, are really exciting. Also an eating disorder program that we're going to be launching in about a month or so, which is going to be really unique because so many programs that currently exist have no focus on queer people, on trans people, on BIPOC people. In fact, it's the complete opposite. And we're trying to create an intervention that can work for people that also cannot afford necessarily to go to those programs if they happen to be needing a higher level of care. So we're working on a model to create a stopgap for folks who need that extra touch. So that's just some of the programming that we're working on right now.
So JM, after all these years, the org has become an independent, federally qualified health center. So tell me about the capital campaign, because you are kind of working to secure the organization a new forever home, new location. So tell me about how that came about and, you know, just about the campaign in general.
You know, as an employee who's been working at Lyon-Martin for 15 years now,
Come on
I've
now.
seen the organization go through a lot of ups and downs financially. And when I became the executive director, one of the most important things I think that you're bestowed with is the financial wellness of the organization and the sustainability of the organization. And so, you know, I thought about all the different models that are out there in terms of, you know, having a sustainable community clinic model. And really, the federally qualified health center model is what allows clinics to be self-sustaining. And that's because once you are an FQHC, you have access to enhanced reimbursement rates through Medicaid, right? So that means that just seeing visits alone, seeing your patients, you know, every day is actually financially sustaining the organization. And that way you don't have to be so reliant on grants, so reliant on, you know, the whims of donors, right? Like it really is self-sustaining. So once we were able to, you know, we did a lot of diversified funding strategies. We improved our donor base. We, you know, brought in 4 million in new grant contracts per year since separating, and we got this FQHC. So we were really like, wow, this is a new financial situation. We're actually sustaining operationally for the first time in many decades, maybe if ever. And we were like, okay, so what does this clinic really need to ensure it's going to survive for generations? And really, because of the real estate market in San Francisco, the answer was very clear. It is owning a building, owning property, and giving that back to the community for generations to come, right? And so that was really the model. And we reached out to a lot of different consultants that work with different nonprofits to help them acquire new property and, you know, obtain financing to do the build out. And as we were doing that, you know, we surveyed community, we surveyed our staff about, you know, what do you want your space to look like? Where do you want it to be in the city, right? What would allow you to work here every day, you know, and be happy to come to work and not like really dread working in a nonprofit setting, right? The answer was like natural light, you know, plants, books, like have it, you know, really be a state-of-the-art clinic, but also have it be a home for us because we spend most of our time, you know, spend most of our time in our job. And so, yeah, we did a lot of work, both internally in terms of like giving people full benefits at just 2 days a week, giving people livable wages, and really focused on, all right, like what do we want our space to be that could really sustain us?
Oh gosh, I think that is amazing. I want to congratulate you on, you know, your leadership and your team and the consultants that help you and all the, you know, all the things you just named to be able to do that because this is such empowering work and impactful work because of, you know, especially in this political we're in an election year, we're being attacked from all kinds of, you know, all kinds of vantage points. Losing a healthcare center or losing direct services, losing programs that really impact community. I just think that, you know, it just would be the worst time to do that. So to have you say that, yo, we're doing this and we're growing and you know, we want to make sure we sustain have a model that is going to sustain this and make sure that we have this for years to come. I think that that is amazing. As far as individually, I saw somewhere in your bio that you lived in Donna, in Boston. I grew up in part of Boston too. So I want to
Okay.
hear a little bit about your history coming up as a leader.
Okay. Well, Boston's a good starting point because that's where I started working in queer and trans healthcare, actually. So, right after college, I did a couple years of City Year, AmeriCorps. You know, I don't know if you know about that program, but the Red Jackets or yellow, depending on where you live. I think it was like San Jose was like blue and yellow jackets. But anyway, that was in Cleveland, and I moved to Boston, and I was working as a legislative aide for a legislator, and that was back in 2003, four, when it was pre-gay marriage. It was more civil union legalization that was kind of happening state to state. Massachusetts, I think, was the second state, so there was just a lot of stuff going on. It was a very intense time. And at that time, I was really struggling with my gender identity. And I was working in an environment that was not very gender friendly, I think, for folks who are struggling with that. The person I worked for is Representative Byron Rushing, who's an incredible person. And it was great. But I think that that was such an intense time that I really felt I'll put it this way. I went from showing up to work and like, you know, flowered dresses and things like that. By the end, I was like, I'm showing up in Converse and Dickies. It was really a mess. I'm like, I can't be in the State House looking like this. I gotta go. So I heard about a position that was opening up the street at a clinic called Fenway Health, and learned about its history and did a little networking and applied for a job as a research assistant on some research studies, and that's really where I got my start. I moved up to coordinator positions, things like that, and was really kind of being groomed at the time to go to school for to get an MPH, which is a Master of Public Health, and took a left turn and went to art school instead, and just kind of was doing my own thing while I was maintaining a career in queer health. I eventually moved to New York and got a job at Callan Lord, which is a LGBT health center there, and started there as the transgender case manager. That was my job, and that's really where things kind of took off, because I started there in 2013. In 2015 is when the state mandated coverage for transgender healthcare access, including surgery coverage. And the patients that we had there were largely uh, you know, uninsured or were relying on state Medicaid largely. And all of a sudden, all these people had access to services that they thought they would never, ever get. And my whole life blew up because I was the only person on staff and care coordination that was working with that particular population. So I had to cross train everyone, and it eventually turned into me becoming a care coordinator and taking folks under my wing and really specializing care for trans populations. And then that grew into becoming a manager slash kind of director to create a whole program that included housing navigation, free counseling for trans youth and their families. But the biggest piece of that being a surgery doula program, which is still growing and still hiring and still like serving anywhere between 800 to 1,000 people a year just accessing surgery alone. And that is a perioperative kind of process, meaning that they work with someone who's field-based, who can take you to your doctor's visits, things like that, work with you at home, visit you after surgery up to 12 weeks. It's like a 12-week process, up to about 4 weeks after surgery. And it's included, drop-in hours, surgery education, training staff, training surgeons, quite frankly, training insurance companies to understand how to offer these services. And a lot of this is actually akin to what JM was doing, I think probably at the same time, but in a different coast, right? So, from there, I kind of moved on to Folks Health, which is a telehealth company. Um, and I eventually kind of found my way to where I am now, working with Lyon-Martin. And so, yeah, a lot of the work I do tends to be towards like scaling and starting operations from scratch and just really kind of building programming as it needs to be done.
And I hope that you were getting paid for all that extra work. I hope they were giving you extra money. I hope that whatever funding that they had, they made sure they compensated you. Well, I pretty doubt it because they be acting funny about the coins, but hope that they did. So JM, what about you? Well, you've been with Lyon-Martin for 15 years. What led you to this work and led you to being such a steadfast entity within this organization? What led you to this work?
The funny thing is that Dee and I have had really parallel careers, and I first heard of Dahana working at Calum Lord when I was doing the same work that they were at Lyon-Martin. And I was like, there's no one else like me. Who else is like me? And then I heard about Dahana and I was like, oh,
I always think we're so alone,
I know I have a twin over there. But yeah, so I went to school out east at Wesleyan University, and I did my thesis on bottom-up approaches to healthcare and healthcare movements amongst marginalized populations, and really kind of like found a through line, whether it be reproductive justice movements, trans health, HIV, Black health movements, right? Like all of these movements are really grounded in this idea of self-determination in healthcare and creating our own knowledge around healthcare needs with each other through community, right? Like I learned about, what trans health is and can look like from my people. I didn't learn it from a healthcare provider, right? Like it's all from friends and people who have done it themselves when resources were really scarce. Through zines, right? YouTube channels, right? Like all those things. A lot of this was before the internet really.
That's how I found my
um, yeah. And so I found Lyon-Martin through my research of, different clinics that were doing this work, and thought that Lyon-Martin was like, the exemplar, trans health clinic. And of course, as soon as I got a job there, I was quite that bubble was burst because it is a nonprofit. I was definitely exploited, all the things. And like the trans health work there was so much to be done, right? Like, yes, we had lots of trans patients, but I was like one of two trans people on staff at that time, and really saw all of the holes in our processes and programming of like what could be, right? So I had, Nick, the trans doctor that was working here and still is, and I would just like put our heads together about like, okay, we know that this law exists that protects people's access to surgery. People still aren't able to access it. How do we push insurance companies to get this stuff covered? And, you know, through appeals process over and over again, we were able to make the insurance companies contract with the surgeons and get things covered for the first time. And so we just did that over and over and over again, created groups, created, you know, an injection teaching class, created our, you know, binder and GAF and breast form exchange program. And really just like I've stayed for so long because I could not find another place where I was respected as a person, you know, I was listened to, and I was able to really be empowered to create programming for my own people in a way that I don't know that I could have done anywhere else. Um, and so, yeah, you know, I just kind of stuck around and I cared deeply about this work and about, you know, my friends and family and community like come to this clinic and rely on it to survive. And I don't want anyone to ever feel the way I felt when I first came out and as trans and didn't know where to go and felt so like isolated and alone and had a really hard time, you know, accessing the care I needed. I just don't want that for anyone ever again. And so you know, my heart is in this place and I feel so passionate about it because I just, I really want better for our people. And I think we can only build it together.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's this, and I'm not saying this to make it seem like it's okay to exploit us. What I'm saying is, I feel like the reason why we put ourselves through some of the bullshit that we experience in these nonprofit organizations, the nonprofit complex, in organizing spaces, and the reason why we do this is because of that passion. So if you are somebody who is not trans or you're in a position of power who is trans, I want you to hear me and hear me clear. Make sure that within your vision and within your whatever you need to do, make sure that you are taking care of our needs and paying us well and really looking at our impact on this country and on this work, because you cannot do this stuff without us. We are sitting here talking to two leaders who said that even before the powerful work that they're doing now, they have been doing life-changing, community impactful work in places where they were and were being underpaid. So make sure that when you're thinking about taking care of your clients, you are also thinking about taking care of your workers, because that is so, so, so important, because we are the ones that's going to be creating the thought leadership that is going to impact your clients. So make sure when you're fundraising, you're thinking about making sure you're fundraising for your workers as well, and the care for them, and make sure they got money for therapy, make sure they got money for their own health care, and you know, their places to live. Like, yeah, we got to make sure we're paying attention to those things. Another element that you really pointed out, that I want to kind of share to our listeners is, if you need a through line. Now, I know sometimes I'm preaching to the choir, but if you need a through line and you need that kind of buy-in to get out of your silos, to get out of the silo of reproductive justice, to get out of your silo of trans rights, to get out of your silo of healthcare, environmental justice, to get out of that silo and work with people across issues, because we know that all of the issues are connected. And so that body sovereignty, that is the through line. We have the right to control what is going on with our bodies, what we do to them, how the government is impacting them, people who are overstepping their boundaries when it comes to choices we get to make about our bodies. That is a through line. That is where you can find common ground to people that you might want to work with. So reach across the lines and get out of those silos, and make sure that you are finding ways that you can work. Where is the overlap, so you can work with other people, and then y'all can be more impactful in community. So I want y'all to tell me, what can the community that is listening do to support y'all?
Right here and right now in this very moment. So we just released a campaign video to kind of launch the capital campaign. So we want people to know that steps are being taken to move towards this literal ownership in one of the queerest cities on the planet, and that, you know, even though things are changing financially all over the country, and especially in San Francisco, that there's still a place for you, that there's still a place for people who need us, right? And so I think just watch the video. It's so beautiful. And you know, if you just make sure you're in the right mindset because you're gonna cry. Because it's just gorgeous. And I think just, you know, looking at it, sharing it, and letting people know that, you know, we're in a phase where we're trying to grow, and that does require open up that coin, you know, and tossing it in there. That is one thing that people could do, but also just letting people know that Lyon-Martin exists and will continue to exist, and we want to be, um, you know, a light in a pretty dark time right now. And so I think that we just want people to know that we exist and that we want to continue to, and that we want to not just exist but thrive. And so that's just, I guess, a message more than an action, right? But that's something that I would want to impart on people.
And JM, you are steering the ship, so you know what would you suggest?
People are migrating to San Francisco all the time. They always have. They're continuing to during this dark time when our rights are being stripped away. And we need to grow to meet the need. And we also need a state-of-the-art clinic where people get the care that they deserve and also feel at home there, right? Like we want a space where people can just drop in if they feel unsafe on the street and have a place to, you know, be received and seen. We are, you know, expanding our specialty care work. We, you know, we don't just do primary care, we do full scope, you know, mental health care, psychiatry, case management, crisis intervention. We do substance use disorder treatment, abortion, you know, physical therapy and traditional Chinese medicine, right? Like we are really trying to build a one-stop shop for our communities to be served by each other and really have that community care and mutual aid model. And if you believe in that and you believe that San Francisco, you know, has been and will continue to be that beacon of hope, then support us, you know, support us in our vision. I think a lot of people are aligned in this vision. And I think unfortunately in this capitalistic society, like it does require money to make things happen, right? But ideally, if we're able to invest in acquiring a building, it will actually require fewer resources down the line, right? Like rent is a deep pit of money. And when you own your own space, you know, that cuts out quite a few expenses. So it will really make this model sustainable for forever. As long as nothing disastrous happens. But yeah, I think, you know, believing in us, sharing our stories, and opening that pocketbook to really support our dreams is all I can ask. Yeah.
And I think it's important for me to name this. When somebody is calling for financial support, we are not talking about poor people. We are not talking about people who ain't got no money. We talk about people who have a dollar or two, who have money to spare, who have access to people who have money. So when you're listening to this, don't think, I don't want you to be the person that's thinking, oh, I ain't got no money to give, da da da. We ain't talking about you. If you struggling and you ain't got no money, that's cool. We understand that. But if you are somebody who have access to people who are looking for projects to support, that's who we want you to share this to. That's who this program that is actually doing the work. That is who we want you to share with. We want you to connect people, because you don't always have to give in that way in a financial way. You can give in the way of your network. If you know somebody looking for something to support and they have the resources to spare, that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to, who has the money, can we put it into something that's actually helping community? And so that's how I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it in a way that even if you don't have money, there's a way that you can support by sharing and knowing. That's why I'm bringing them on the show, knowing that there are projects. I'm a Black trans woman. I want to highlight projects that are for us, by us. And so that's what my work has, for the past 20 years, has been about showcasing that kind of stuff. And so I want you to know that it exists, so that in your brain, when you come across somebody who says, oh my God, I've been wanting to support and blah, 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 whether it's performative or not, if they write in a check, that's okay. You can say, hey, I know this amazing program in San Francisco that I heard about on Marsha's Plate. And hey, let me send you the link to them because I heard about it. I ain't got no money, but you got some money. Here you go.
And you
This,
don't need to live in San Francisco to donate. You can donate from anywhere.
anywhere,
Yeah.
exactly. We
Internet is
want y'all
fast.
to know that it exists. And so I don't want y'all to be thinking, oh, there's no programs like this. No, there are programs like this that you can support and help. So I want to make sure that you know that's what we mean when we're talking about money and things like that. It's not necessarily, we know that we have a big audience of people who are like, oh, I can't afford that. I'm barely paying my rent. We know that. That's
Well,
okay.
Oh,
it's such a
yeah.
sensitive topic, right? Like, I think it's so difficult to talk about money, to acknowledge it. Like, it's difficult to, it's an emotional, it brings up emotions for people, sometimes really difficult
Yes.
ones. And so it can be really uncomfortable to ask, like, and, we're in the business of doing that in order to sustain the clinic into the future. So we have to become comfortable with these conversations. But it also means that everybody has to start to kind of acknowledge these things as we grow as a community and want to support each other across the board. Is that, we do have to have these conversations and figure out ways to be strategic in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also just on a values note, like we are all for redistribution of wealth, like like we don't want the same $5 passed around in the community, Like there are people out there with really deep pockets that you're just like 1 degree, 2 degrees away from that you don't even know. And then they can give more than anyone could ever dream. We're not trying to, make broke people more broke. Like that's not the goal.
Right.
And I mean, we have a guaranteed income program for trans people that we launched last year, giving away $1,200 a month to folks making less than $600 a month when they applied. And so we
That
really,
these Republicans are trying to block and
they
stop.
are. But like, we did evaluation of that program. We saw that people were like housed, that they were feeling more safe, that their anxiety and depression scores were down. They were doing less, survival sex work. Like it really works. And so, yeah, we are very much in like on board with the idea that like, if you need to keep your money for you, keep your money.
Yeah.
If you need that, like we fully support that. We're trying to reach the folks with the really deep pockets.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Tell the people where they can find you.
Well, for the capital campaign specifically, there's savelionmartin.org. And then there's the clinic. Did I get that wrong?
SaveLionMartin.com.
Sorry, .com. Yes.
Got it.
We're for profit over there, right? And then the clinic itself is not Save Lion Martin, is lionmartin.org.
I love that. And I am going to put those links in the bottoms.
Gimme euphoria, more than peace of mind. It's the
What I always do when people come on the show, before we end, I always because we're talking about trans stuff and all that kind of stuff, we usually kind of the focus is on kind of like gender dysphoria. What is bringing you euphoria this week? Like it could be the mundane, just this week, it can be something small, it could be something big, it could be whatever it is. What is bringing you joy this week?
I'm going to be really basic and just say sunshine.
That's not basic.
But truly, like, I mean, where I'm living, it's really gorgeous and it's been great for a couple of days. So I'm just happy to have some sunlight on my skin. Trying to enjoy the summer and trying to, for me, like with the news being so bleak, finding a lot of joy in my community. Okay, that's the one I'm going to land on. My community brings me euphoria for sure, 100% of the time. That's where that's the source of my joy for sure. So the people who are in my life that keep me lifted and keep me sane and, we're able to laugh together and cry together. Those are the people that, that's what brings me joy for sure.
What about you, JM?
It's hard to sometimes scale back and really appreciate our joys. But I think when I think about this question, I go to gratitude, like for the privileges and access that I have been able to have in terms of gender affirming care and, you know, chosen family, having a roof over my head, you know, the material privileges that are allowing me to continue to survive and thrive in the ways that I can. Yeah, I'm alive today because of my people and because people believed in me when I did not and could not see the light. So just the gratitude, I guess.
Oh, that is enough. My euphoria this week is Dark Testaments and Other Poems by Polly Murray. And it is an introduction by Elizabeth Alexander. So this book is tons, like amazing poetry by Polly Murray. Anybody knows that Polly Murray is my favorite civil rights leader, even though they were erased. We do not have any rights, modern rights as a people, as women, as Black people, as queer people, without the brilliant legal mind that is Polly Murray. And so their words are so amazing. So this is a book called Dark Testament and Other Poems of their work, and I just been like, oh my God, I wish it pisses me off that I'm growing up and I didn't know about Polly, and
I just found out about her just a couple years ago. I had no idea.
yeah, just it's so annoying. It pisses me off, but rediscovering them and discovering from the documentary that they actually, if they were born a little bit later, they probably would have transitioned and would have been a trans masculine person. And for me, no, if I would have known about that and growing up because I came out in the 90s, growing up in the 90s, it just what that would have done to what options that I would have thought that I would have had. And so it pissed me off that that was erased based on respectability politics and people not understanding trans people and queer people and, you know, the intersection of being a Black assigned female at birth and, you know, just all these things that they were. It just, their words, I hold on to their words. They're so powerful. And this is what has been bringing me joy this week, Dark Testament. So I want to thank y'all for joining me. I appreciate the work that y'all do. And thank you for coming on Marsha's Plate and sharing the work that you do. And I hope that you know, of course, I'm not a hope. I know that you're going to be successful. We are not going to let the Lyon-Martin legacy just, you know, die. Of course, we're going to make it work. And yeah, I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Diamond.
I make it easy to love me. I make it easy to care for me. I make it easy to share all your world with me. And if you have the best of both worlds,